Now let's have a look at remote command execution, also known as RCE. So remote command execution is a broad term that's applied to a vulnerability that allows an attacker to execute commands on the host operating system via the vulnerable application. This can be done in a number of ways. It could be either injecting a command, or also it could be done by injecting code that the application is expecting that could lead into command execution. Again, this is a very broad term. It could happen in a number of different ways, but we're going to cover the most popular and common ways of finding an RCE. So imagine you're going to a website where the application is looking for the stock if an item is available. We're just guessing that in the background, they're running some command on the operating host, on the operating system host, and it's going to check if this exists. So if you're looking for the ID 5141, our assumption is that in the backend, there's going to be a command that's running another application on the host that says, hey, on here, look for run this application and give it the value 45141. So it comes back and it says 3 items are available, and that's what's being given to the user. So what we can do in this case, we're going to start fuzzing it. We're going to start messing with it to see if there is a remote command execution in this case. And again, it doesn't have to be numerical IDs. It could be anywhere that we think, hey, this application may rely on another application that's being run on the operating system to retrieve the data that's being shown to our user. So in this case, we're going to end our previous command in a Linux environment. You can do this in a number of ways, which we'll cover later on. But one of the most popular ways of doing this is a semicolon, which says, hey, this command is done. I want to add another one right after this. So we do semicolon and we give it the ls, which is the list of files within the directory. Again, if you're not familiar with these commands, I highly recommend you looking into getting very familiar with a Linux operating system. You can do Ubuntu, you can do Kali Linux. It's very beneficial just outside of remote command execution to be good at Linux in general. But let's look at this example. Again, we give it our value 5141, semicolon to end it, and we say ls, which executes our Linux command, and it comes back and says 3 items are available, but also here's the output for the ls command. So we get the list of every file or every folder within that folder that we're working on. Again, that folder that we're in is wherever the second application that's being ran in the backend is hosted. So in this case, whatever that folder name is, whatever the path of it is, we're going to get a list of items within that directory. So we get index.php, images, CSS, and htaccess. So as I mentioned earlier, there are different methods where you can actually separate commands. One of them, it could be the semicolon, it could be the and sign, it could be 2 of them, it could be a pipe or double pipe. You can use all of those to run a command by finishing the previous one and adding another one. So the second one you can do is a bash inline execution. Again, highly recommend getting good at bash. It would help you if you're looking for RCEs, which what it does is it would inline within the same command run a secondary command and also output its results. Again, with bug bounties, you want to be very careful with what commands you run on these hosts. You don't want to run the wrong command and cause an outage. So these are the 4 commands that I typically use. There's a pwd, which is the printing, which prints the working directory, whatever you are working, whatever the application is hosted, it's going to come back and give you that directory. The uname command, I usually use the uname space -a. This comes back and gives you basic information about the operating system. The ID command tells you about the user, what group they're in, what user you are, and the numeric ID. And last but not least, hostname, which prints the machine's host name and domain name within the DNS and tells you this is the application's host name that's given to the operating system. And of course, we just covered all of the different ways of doing OS commands. So we are executing operating system commands, but you can actually do this within different programming languages. So if you have the opportunity to execute and inject a PHP script within a PHP site, you can use PHP's functionalities. You can use functions like shell exec or different ones to actually execute a operating system command using PHP. So that's also another way that's very common when it comes down to looking for RCEs. Again, before we wrap this chapter, I want to make sure you understand that RCE is a very broad term. You can find them in a different number of ways. It could be in file uploads, which we'll cover later on. It could be by modifying site content. It could be debug functionalities. There are tons of different ways of doing it. By the end of the day, it's some similar ways to what we have covered so far.